Hey guys, and welcome to the dating game with Troy Francis. Myself, Troy Francis. I've been a dating coach for over a decade, helping guys and girls all over the planet improving their outcomes in the current dating marketplace. So, look, today we're going to talk about masculinity, which is a key topic for this channel. And basically, what is masculinity and how do you showcase it, I guess? Right. And it seems to me that there are, broadly speaking, two ways of communicating masculinity to the world. There is what you might call performative masculinity, and then there is essential masculinity. Okay, so we're going to talk about the difference between those two things and whether one is better than the other and the advantages or not of each of them. Okay, before we get into it, please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We've got content going out on a daily basis, actionable dating advice, plus breaking down what's going on out there in the dating market. So subscribe, hit the notifications bell, give the video a like, and we will get into it. So masculinity, okay, performative masculinity, right? This is basically when guys will cosplay what they think masculinity should be all about. Okay. And this is why you get dudes with massive beards wearing trucker caps and, they've taken a bunch of trend. Quite sort of, I mean, there's things like being into sports. I mean, there's all these different things. There's all of these different aspects of things that are commonly associated with masculinity. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. All right. I want to make that very clear. There's absolutely nothing wrong with any of those things if those are things that you're actually into and those are things that you actually want to do. Because on the flip side of it, what I want to get to is to thinking about, okay, but what is essential masculinity, right? What is the essence of it? And for me, the essence of it is actually very simple. The essence of it is doing what you want to do, okay? Doing what you want to do independent of what other people think, independent of what society may tell you to do, independent of what the matrix may tell you what to do, the corporate world, advertising, the media, etc., etc., etc. There's this expression, being your own man, and it's literally that, isn't it? Are you your own man, or are you somebody who's following a guidebook that's been written for you by somebody else? Now, the problem with some of the performative masculinity stuff is that really, you know, you're just following a template that somebody else has invented. And a lot of guys will do this. A lot of guys will get into sports that they don't particularly like. They'll go to games that they're not particularly interested in. They'll do stuff that they don't really want to do because they think that it's going to make them look more masculine in front of their peers. And to some extent, probably that's going to work. But that in itself doesn't display essential masculinity, because essential masculinity would be saying, actually, listen, no, I'm not into that. That's not what I want to do. I want to go and do this instead. Okay. So, with all due respect, that's what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, tough shit. Okay. That's essential masculinity. So, what do you get with the two things? Well, with performative masculinity, and by that I mean, dressing in a certain way, um, looking very big. I mean, we were looking at a study earlier because there's always this debate with guys about, okay, so how big do you need to get? How brawny do you need to get in order to be attractive to women? And guys will always assume that you need to basically look like The Rock in order to be attractive to women. But actually, when you look at the stats, I think it's something like only 16% of women favored the most built guy. Okay. The most popular body shape for men is actually either, well, it's somewhere between what you might call lean or shredded, right? Those kind of archetypes, right? So the guy who's super big men assume, right, that's the most attractive body shape because that's kind of what we're taught, that's what we're told by the media, blah, blah, blah. That's not necessarily what women find most attractive, okay? They like guys who are either, it was lean and athletic actually were the two categories that they liked the most. The one they didn't like was skinny or slender, maybe it was, but you know, the skinniest, the lowest body weight they weren't attracted to. But yeah, so it's athleticism and it's leanness that is actually the most important. Now that kind of, not that those things are deemed unmasculine, but it sort of goes a little bit counter to the narrative of like, well, you've got to be like Jocko Willink, otherwise, you know, you're not getting any action. It's actually not true. It's not borne out in the studies that exist. Okay, so that's one example. All right, and then there are other examples of sort of masculine behavior like boorishness and you know just the way that you present yourself. It's very much a caricature, okay, of masculinity. Now, in my view, masculinity can be expressed in a number of different ways, okay? And what you want to do, and we often talk about this in when I teach my course The Edge with James Tusk, we talk about archetypes, okay? We talk about, okay, so what archetype do you fit into? All right? And the most important thing I think anybody can do is play to their strengths, really. Okay. Because clearly, you know, I'm never going to be that Wes Watson type dude. I'm never going to be that kind of Jocko Willing type dude. That's just not an archetype that I'm easily going to fit into. Okay. Realistically. All right. However, there is an archetype that I do fit into, which is kind of this, I suppose, slightly older, maybe a little bit more refined. Glorifying myself here, guys, but you know, maybe slightly more refined, kind of British, slightly older dude. Okay. That has its own value. All right. There's no point in me pretending to be like one of these other guys just because that's what I think society is telling me to do. And it's bad enough if I'm doing that making a video or if I'm doing that socially, but it's even worse if I'm doing that in a dating context. Because the thing with women, as we know, is they are very, very intuitive and they are very, very able to figure out if somebody is congruent or not. Okay, they're very easy. They find it very easy to figure out if somebody is faking it or not. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to look at the way that you are, and you want to look at the proclivities that you have, the interests that you have, the sort of person that you would like to be, right? The sort of man that you would like to be. So you might even pick, you know, a famous actor or a famous character from a movie or something that is realistic to you, okay? And then you might think, right, so that's kind of my North Star. That's what I'm aiming at. So maybe like Daniel Craig, James Bond. Okay, that's my North Star. That's where I'm aiming. I'm not saying I'm going to get there, but that's my kind of that's the area where I want to be. Okay, and I'm going to go for that. What I'm not going to do is go for Jason Statham or Vin Diesel or something else, right? Because that's outside my zone of genius. That's just not realistic, really, for the type of dude that I am. Okay, so you want to select firstly, okay, the kind of person that you want to be, the kind of man that you want to present as, and then you want to work towards fulfilling that archetype. Okay, and again, you know, a lot of this stuff. If you find yourself in a situation where you're in a social group with a bunch of guys, maybe you've known them for a long time, and there are certain expectations on the way that you behave and the way you dress and the way guys are supposed to be and blah, blah, blah. It can be very hard to break out of that. Okay. And I think a lot of men have problems with this and with the dating stuff as well. Because if you're watching content like this and you want to level up and you want to get out there, you want to, you know, meet different women and you want to be a different kind of, you know, have a different sort of social life, but you're held back because you've got all of these dudes around you who you've known since you were 9 who are saying, no, don't do that. That's this, that's that, that's that. That's not how a man should be. Okay. You should be like this. You should be like Phil because he's the head guy of the group. Okay. But the reality is you probably can't compete with Phil because he's already maxed out that archetype. Okay. You need to be, and again, it's the old cliche, the hoary old cliche, but you need to be the best version of yourself, or at least you need to be the best version of the archetype that you have selected for yourself. Okay. Hope that makes sense. Now, guys will then overcomplicate this massively, and they'll say, "Well, I want to be a little bit like Cillian Murphy in, the show he was in. I want to be a little bit of Daniel Craig. I want to be a little bit of Christian Bale. I want to be a little bit of this, a little bit of that." Don't massively overcomplicate it. Okay, this isn't meant to be some kind of, because all you're going to do is confuse yourself. You're going to select something that's just too complex, hard to remember. You're going to be sort of like second guessing your behavior the whole time, trying to be a little bit like this, trying to be a little bit like that. You want to keep it as simple as possible. You want a very, very simple kind of idea. Okay. So in my case, for example, I'm an English guy. I'm of a certain age. I'm of a certain build. Okay. So I'm moving towards, leanness. I'm moving towards shreddedness in terms of my body type. I like to dress well. I like to come across in a relatively refined way, but I also like to ensure that there's a bit of steel behind the way that I come across. Okay. There's an intensity. When people look at me, when people interact with me, they know I'm not fucking around. Okay. They know that there's some seriousness there as well. There's an element of toughness underneath the polite exterior. Okay. And, particularly if you're in a dating context, you want there to be that masculine feminine polarity. All right. But it's not hugely complicated. It's not like this thing where I have to second guess everything that I do or say, because it's like, oh my God, would that fit the archetype or does that not fit the archetype? It's relatively natural to me, okay? Because it's not so far, well, it's not really removed at all from how I actually am. I might choose at points to amp up certain aspects of it, but it's not like it's this huge stretch where I'm pretending to be someone completely different, okay? So that's what you want to do. You want to look at yourself and try to appraise yourself honestly and figure out, all right, so, how do I look physically? Um, how do I come across? Broadly like that, who are some of the coolest people that I could emulate? And then you want to look at them and you want to think, okay, so what do they do? What do they do that maybe I could, not copy, but I could take little bits of it and sort of improve my own presentation. Okay. And from there, you're kind of good to go. But the point is, what I see a lot, and you see this a lot online, and the American dudes do this a lot. I mean, British guys do it also, but it's a very sort of cookie cutter notion of masculinity where every guy kind of has to be the same. And it's like, no, you got to be like this. You've got to be jacked. You got to have the beard. You got to have the trucker cap. You've got to have X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, you don't fit into the club. And actually, that can kind of be detrimental because, firstly, if you're trying to play a role that's not quite you, that's not going to go down well anyway. And secondly, if everybody's in the same club, you don't really have any standout, right? It's better. You guys will be familiar with Seth Godin, probably the purple cow, right? The idea of making a product that stands out from the rest of the market. It's actually better if you've got some standout when you enter into a social space. I mean, one of the reasons why when I was going on these different podcasts and things like this, I would always try and wear suits and nice jackets and things like that, was largely because most other people weren't. Okay. It's a small thing, but it sets you apart and it gives you it kind of gives you a look, it's something like, okay, right. So this guy, he likes to dress a certain way. Maybe that says something about him. He's got this British accent. I know a lot of you guys don't like my British accent. That's fine, but whatever. But I'm just saying, I'm playing into what is already there and kind of amping it up in order to create standout, because creating standouts, particularly in the sexual marketplace, is a good thing, because too many guys are sort of bland, vanilla, and they're kind of copies of other existing people. And the worst thing that you can be is not just a copy of performative masculinity, but a bad copy of performative masculinity, right? I mean, that's the very worst thing. You try and do the performative masculinity thing and you kind of fuck it up. And you kind of don't do it very well. And then that's even worse. And she's just like, oh, this guy's just a buffoon. The main thing, though, really, as I said earlier, about all of this is doing what you want to do. Okay, for me, that has to be the central tenet of masculinity. Okay, having boundaries, having standards, having expectations of yourself and of others, okay, and upholding those. That has to be the key thing, all right? It's like, look, This is how I want to conduct my life. These are the things I want to do. These are the people I want to have around me. This is how I want things to go. If you're not cool with that, okay, fine. That's great. That's great for you. But I'm going to do my thing, okay? And if you sort of transgress or you cross those lines, then respectfully, I'm going to remove myself from that situation because it's not going to serve me. Okay. And that, I think, is the fundamental thing. I think it's about having a vision for yourself, a vision for your life, and upholding it, basically, and not backing down on it. Okay. There are some things you can compromise on for sure. I mean, there's no harm in compromising sometimes. I mean, not every battle is worth getting into a war over, but, you know, ultimately, there are certain things that you want. And those are the things that you have to stand up for, and you have to ensure that they happen. That really is the true thing. And I do worry sometimes that there are guys in trying to ape this kind of faux masculinity. They kind of get blown around like reeds in the wind. And they're not really like, you know, they don't really stand for anything. Okay. And again, that's not very attractive. What is more attractive is somebody who, even if he is disliked, stands for something and is able to back that up and is able to adhere to his principles and to make it known to others around him that he expects them to adhere to his standards as well. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Hope that's of some help to you. Please do let me know in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. Please give the video a like on your way out. Hit notifications. I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.